Hello and welcome back to the County Chat channel. Today we are going to start a new series we'll be doing throughout the season as we go through here in the County Championship season. The first two rounds have happened. Now they're in the books and we're going to be looking back on them in this episode today. This is going to be a Division 1 special. The same sort of episode will come out for Division 2. But yeah, we're going to go through, look at all the teams, sort of look at the fixtures, any sort of particular noteworthy fixtures. Say we'll be picking a sort of standout team for these first 2 weeks, looking at kind of any sort of storylines, news stories, all of that kind of stuff within the world of county cricket, and then we'll be kind of picking a sort of standout 11 or the County Chat 11, which will be kind of updating through the summer. But we have to start somewhere, so the first 2 weeks we'll be having the 11 from that, and then kind of going through any other things to point out, and then sort of alongside that 11 we'll be picking kind of standout players in each role: a batter, a bowler, and an all-rounder. But without further ado, we'll get kicked off here in the episode, I guess, and we're going to get started talking straight away. And if you're watching, we're going to be getting straight into some screen sharing, a classic County Chat video. It wouldn't be a County Chat video without a little bit of screen sharing in there for you guys. But anyway, we're just going to start off as a screen sharing in the sense of just having a look at the results, having a look at our trusty old ESPN Cricket Info. So first round, there was we had Surrey versus Warwickshire. Edgbaston has tended to be a very, very good pitch for batting, and it definitely proved to be thus. And I think Surrey and Warwickshire's bowling lineups have both still had a few questions in the first few weeks. Essex, won an incredibly handsome victory down in Southampton, and I think everyone after that week, including myself for my overreaction picks, very much saw that as like, Essex are really looking good for this summer. We'll get obviously onto their second result. But it wasn't as flattering. We had a very, very good game down in Cardiff. Actually, really kind of went down to the wire. Kind of all three results were in the offing for both Glamorgan and Yorkshire. Ended up in a draw, and a good game of cricket. Now, good old Sussex by the Sea. They won a very impressive win down at Leicester, up in Leicestershire. It kind of never really looked like being like not winning in a sense, and Leicestershire's bowling lineup didn't look great, which has been a bit of a theme for them for the beginning of the season. But Sussex have been looking good, and that was a big win away from home, especially given all the winter torment. And then Taunton hosted a fixture. No massive score this year, but again the wicket was pretty good for batting on. Somerset was probably the only team who looked like winning that, given their second innings there with that 407. So that was kind of game week 1. It's always difficult to do too much, and that's why I've decided to go for a 2-week sort of period of time, in a sense. Actually, whilst we're here, we can look at the table, but we've got Somerset and Nottinghamshire up at the top, Sussex, Essex, Surrey, Hampshire, Warwickshire, Leicestershire, Glamorgan, and then Yorkshire. Now, Sussex obviously being the one team who've won 2, but they're, due to the points deduction, are still below Nottinghamshire and Somerset, who have won 1 and drawn 1. Now, on to the sort of round 2 results. We had Essex-Somerset, and that was where I was mentioning about Essex having this unbelievably great performance against Hampshire, and then got beaten pretty handsomely at home, to be honest. I think, whether or not you'd say it was a bad time to bat first, effectively, on that wicket, maybe that would be the case, because they got bowled out for 149, and then Somerset batted well. But then again, their second innings total 245, which was nowhere near Somerset. So to me, it was just a case of Essex got outclassed. But the worrying sign for an Essex fan would be Chelmsford used to be, when they were a dominant time side Essex, that you'd never even dreamed of getting a win at Chelmsford in a way. Like, there was a win, it was going to be a draw or a loss as a visiting team. Whereas Essex at the moment, and last year was really noticeable, they did start losing a lot more at home, and this was an absolute trouncing at the end of the day by Somerset. I mean, Jack Leach was opening the batting in that innings, and then Archie Vaughan came out and opened the batting and just swashbuckled for sort of 40-something not out in that chase in the second innings. So anyway, a big performance from Somerset, and it was a kind of a moving round 2. There was quite a few more draws, but this was only 1 draw in Division 1 in this round. But anyway, Sussex beat Warwickshire, and this was probably one of the sort of a very tight game throughout. I, as a Sussex fan, had seen, thought Sussex were kind of behind the 8 ball. Unfortunately for Warwickshire, it seemed like a bit of a misread on the pitch, because they batted first and scored 267, limited Sussex to 204, then had another similar thing in the third innings, 264. And then Sussex just as the wicket got better, it seemed, as the days went on, chased 328 to win the game. A brilliant Jack Leaning 100 and Tom Price scoring a 70 as well alongside them, alongside Jack Leaning, to have a brilliant partnership to win the game. So again, Sussex the only team to win both their opening fixtures, and I think Warwickshire again had been a bit of a pick for a dark horse, but their bowling lineup in that fourth innings did look little bit toothless at points. But again, I think the wicket did flatten out a bit, so you have to take it with a pinch of salt. Now, Hampshire, having had a torrid time of it at home against that Essex side I was mentioning, had a brilliant performance really up at Headingley. Again, sort of never looked like the first innings they won, if you will, like just in a simple sense. They scored 251. Yorkshire scored 177. But then that second innings, Hampshire just took themselves into a position where they really were unlikely to lose, and it meant that their bowling lineup, led by Carl Abbott, could just have a go at them in the fourth innings, and Carl Abbott was absolutely spectacular in that fourth innings, leading to Hampshire to win by 214. So very much a tale of two very differing game weeks for Hampshire in that sense. Now, at the Oval, runs were scored, it's safe to say. I mean, I haven't done the mental maths there, but it's probably about 1.4k runs for 24 wickets, which is a pretty, brutally not a good and competitive pitch. I mean, especially given it's early April, Surrey just didn't produce a pitch that could have a result. And I think I've been seeing lots of content from Surrey Cricket Ground sort of talking about how it's the best ground in the country, but when the game being played was 5:20, played 6:91, it's a bit of a tough sell, I would say. But anyway, Surrey's bowling lineup has looked a bit, as my pick for the County Championship winners, their bowling lineup has looked toothless, to be quite frank. And I think they've been on two very, very flat wickets, don't get me wrong, up at Edgbaston and then back at home at the Oval. But I kind of thought that would be their game plan, and their bowlers who had a little bit more pace to them and a few more extra spinners would mean that kind of suits Surrey. But Leicestershire, a team that's just been promoted, scoring 691 against your bowling lineup, no matter the wicket, is it's just not a good sign, simply put, for a title-winning kind of side, or a side that wants to be in that conversation. Now, speaking of title-winning sides, Nottinghamshire, the defending champions, I mean, they took care of business in a way. They were playing at home to a newly promoted side. If Nottinghamshire had anything less than a win in this, you would be going a bit of sort of warning lights in a way. But they didn't, and Glamorgan fought incredibly hard in that second innings to try and get it to a draw. But Nottinghamshire just had the depth of bowling that could kind of overwhelm them. So that's kind of it. I mean, there's lots of standout performances, and we'll kind of get into that obviously now. But yeah, plenty to talk about in a sense, and I think the looking at the lineup and looking at the Division 1 table, it kind of paints a bit of a mixed picture in a sense. I think Glamorgan, Yorkshire, and Leicestershire being down near the bottom, I think, is possibly the truth. I think I was a little bit optimistic maybe in my prediction of Leicestershire getting further into that mid-table, but Hampshire again, I think their reliance on Carl Abbott, I think, is something I've mentioned a lot, and I think it'll be interesting to see how that plays out over a period of time. Warwickshire, as I mentioned, I think they have flattered to deceive a little bit, maybe compared to their sort of pre-season predictions. I still see them as a dark horse contender, but yeah, it would be an interesting one. I mean, the team I've obviously been most wrong about was my own county, Sussex. I was sort of very doom and gloom, and I think it was hard not to be maybe in the financial situation. But hold my hands up, I was very much wrong, at least for those 2 weeks. But the reality is obviously all of these, as I mentioned in the kind of me doing my overreactions for game week 1, at the end of the day, even just talking kind of more calmly and maybe more analytically, it's hard not to anything for this to be an overreaction in a sense, because I think reality is division, the first 2 rounds can cause a bit of like false hope, and it can change people's perspective on a season. But 2 out of 14 is not very much. It's not a big proportion, but because it's sort of cricket's new and exciting and it's this new season, you can sort of feel like you're getting like dragged in. So as a Sussex fan, I'm like, oh my God, title charges on. Here we go. But the reality is it's a long season. It will ebb and flow, and it'll be interesting to see. I mean, the example as I would bring up is at Kent last year in Division 2. They won their first 2 games of the season and then finished dead last in the County Championship because they didn't win from that point on. So they probably didn't win from, probably like May through to September, and that can happen. Each game is a different game, and even if you have good momentum behind you as a side, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to win the game of cricket you go into. Each 4-day game is different, and that's the beauty of it, in my opinion. But yeah, there's definitely been some interesting trends you could kind of drag out, I guess, in a sense. And I think, we'll sort of move on to sort of the next segment, if you will, of the show is just talking about the kind of general news or the sort of the just sort of stuff that is happening in the county championship cricket. And I think more than anything, the thing that has been on people's lips has been the injury replacement thing. So we've had, I want to say 3 or 4 examples of it happening in the first few weeks. I could be missing a few, but I know Noah Thane came in for Tom Wesley, and that's left Sam Cook to be captaining Essex. I'm now definitely forgetting the other sort of few that there has been, but there's been multiple. It's certainly been called into question. I think even Somerset had 2 people come in. I think Archie Vaughan came in, and let me just look at that game, because I'm pretty sure it was in Somerset's win against Essex. But yeah, substitute in Archie Vaughan for Lewis Goldworthy, and then Will Smead came in for Tom Kohler-Cadmore. Now, it's almost impossible as just as a fan who commentates on this sort of stuff to talk about, you know, the ins and outs as if I know any better. But I think it's been safe to say, I think a few people have been caused into question about how much is it going to work? How much is it working just in general? You know, Liam Before Wicket, who's appeared on the channel, he made a sort of a skit about it, and I think it's certainly going to be something which needs some working out, and whether or not they've maybe thought through all of the ramifications of it being put into place. Paul Dennett, who I'm a huge fan of, who works for does a bit of work for Wisden on The Scoop. He talks about it in the sense of, like, I think it's a cricket coming into the 21st century thing, and you know, it's going to take a while as cricket fans to get used to it, but it is something that needed to happen, because, and I kind of accepted his point of view of it, of the sense of, like, if you told someone in a football match that if you get a calf strain in the first 5 minutes that you just have to play with 10 for the next 10, you know, for 85 minutes, everyone would be thinking, what the hell, for lack of a better phrase. So cricket, someone getting injured on day one, the same thing should be applied. But I guess people's suggestion is cricket is quite unique. You can bring on a substitute fielder, so the game doesn't change massively, and bowlers being able to bowl, you know, for 4 days, or batters being able to bat with a bit of a, you know, whether it be a sort of a sprained hand, or sprained hand, like that's a medical term, but basically being able to play through injury is a big part of 4-day cricket and multi-day cricket, and I can sort of see that. But in this world where we're getting further down the line of player welfare, does that make much sense? As you can probably tell, I'm kind of conflicted. I totally see the perspective of it's such an easy thing to be taken advantage of. You know, Liam Skip talked about someone having sort of a funny tummy, and yeah, everyone would agree that if it was a world in which that was the case, you'd kind of be like, oh, come on, they can go off for 50 minutes whilst the 12th man comes on and field. But obviously, I think that that's a tongue-in-cheek skip. But my point being is it's a kind of grey area which I think will take some time to get worked out. And I hope it does, because I think it's got value as an idea. I think maybe what like any new rule, in a sense, like, you know, I don't know, rugby union had issues with blood subs being used in a way to, like, exploit it, in a sense. And it's elite sport. Everyone's looking for those little fine margins that you can sort of do and make a win out of. And you know, Somerset went on to win that match quite handsomely. I'm not pretending it has anything to do with that, but again, these injury substitutions are an interesting aspect of county championship cricket, and they've started, and I'm interested to see how it plays out over a full season, don't get me wrong, but I'm sure there will be more cases of it throughout the year, and I'm sure this won't be the last I talk of it throughout this summer, because yeah, it's just, you know, it's like anything that comes in, VAR and football or anything like that, you know, it causes a stir because it's different and it's new, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong, but then sometimes it does. So it's a funny old thing. It's you know, county cricket's been played in England since the 1890s, or even earlier than that, but the county championship has kind of existed since the 1890s, and it hasn't had injury substitutes till this day. So, you know, someone a bit more like a old school look at it would be like, well, it's worked for this long, why change it? And it's a hard one to argue with, in a sense. So I don't know. I could see both sides of it, and I guess maybe that's me being very, I don't know, non-committal. But I think I can see the value in it, but I can also see the kind of, it can be taken advantage of, and it will be interesting, as I say, to sort of see how that plays on. Another thing I just sort of picked out, because I just how my brain looked at it, and I wondered if anyone else noticed this, and it was something else I've kept my eye on in the sort of general news of the county championship in the first 2 weeks, is that Surrey have had both Jamie Smith and Ollie Pope available. Now, it's been a big thing made of Ollie Pope's career, is the fact that Bazball era, they put him up to 3 in the England team, and he had some good results, but had some mixed results, and has now been effectively dropped. And I think everyone expects Jacob Bethel will be the England test number 3 going forward. Now, the only reason I'm mentioning this is that Surrey have just played their first 2 games of the season, and both of them have been very effective, Jamie Smith and Ollie Pope, kind of showing their class, showing their international sort of pedigree in a way. But especially Jamie Smith. I mean, Ollie Pope has been good, but Jamie Smith has been excellent. But the reason I bring this all up is that Jamie Smith has batted 3 and Ollie Pope has batted 4. So Jamie Smith for England is batting 7 as a wicketkeeper batter, with Ollie Pope up at 3, or as of the last 2-3 years. And then for Surrey, their county, Jamie Smith is up at 3 and Pope is at 4. Now, obviously, number 4 in England is pretty well sewn up. It's safe to say with Joe Root being a player. But the idea that Surrey basically were like, it almost feels like, a sly diss feels obviously massively over-egging it. But Jamie Smith batting 3 rather than Ollie Pope, in a sense, felt like every Surrey fan's kind of always thought that, and I had plenty of Surrey fans when I talked about Ollie Pope in the comment section talking about how he just isn't at number 3 and he shouldn't be. And I always say with this, your county's better than I do, and I can see that, and I watch Ollie Pope as an England batter, and I think you just don't see him a number 3, especially in Test match cricket. But the fact that he's dropped down to Surrey's team and possibly will have a kind of full year at Surrey, if he doesn't bat at all at 3 for Surrey, you're kind of there like, Surrey, who've known Ollie Pope since he was, knee-high to a grasshopper, 8-year-old, whatever, have never really batted him 3. I think he did bat 3 a few times when he was moving to England for 3, because I think England were like, can you give him opportunity at 3, because it's a skill and it's getting used to it. But I don't think anyone who'd seen Ollie Pope's early career, when he first broke into the England team, when he was a kind of ingenuity T20 batter and he moved into county championship and started scoring lots of runs from 4 and 5 for Surrey and even down at 6, I don't think anyone would have seen his career progression being to go to be a Test match number 3. And it's kind of, that's been what has happened, and it has kind of worked. But the fact that Surrey then, he's come back to Surrey and he's not batting 3, to me is a bit of a sign that maybe they got that one wrong. I don't know. And basically the sense that they put Jamie Smith above him, who's been this wicketkeeper batter for England, in my opinion, sort of saying, someone even like Jamie Smith is better suited for 3 than Ollie Pope is. Again, maybe I'm overreading into that sort of storyline, but I guess it's just my opinion that it was an interesting thing that Surrey have gone with Smith 3 and Pope at 4. Who knows? Subtle diss from Surrey? Maybe not, but maybe I just spotted it. Now, I'm going to be doing a sort of standout team from Division 1 for each of these 2 weeks as we go through the season, and I'll be doing the same thing for Division 2, I'm sure you imagine. The standout team for Division 1 obviously makes me quite happy, having predicted them to go down in my pre-season predictions and rankings. It's Sussex. I mean, if only one team wins the 2 matches to start the year, then they've got to be the standout team, right? A few other teams have been quite impressive, I'd say. I mean, especially that win for Somerset at Essex is probably the most impressive win as a standalone win. But, Sussex have gone up to Leicestershire, a real galvanised side who just got promoted, who I think had a lot of hope going into the season, and the first 2 weeks hasn't helped that for Leicestershire and the Foxes. But Sussex went up there and it trounced them, for lack of a better word. I mean, I watched a lot of that. I was on holiday at the time, and watching along, you just kind of are like, Sussex just always felt ahead of the game, and the bowling always felt more threatening versus Leicestershire's bowling against Sussex's batting, and they won a convincing sort of 200-run win. And then they had a big test at home, going back to Hove, and are playing Warwickshire. And again, this Warwickshire team got Bo Webster in it, Chris Wokes in it, lots of sort of international calibre cricketers, and Sussex does as well, of course. And again, it kind of ebbed and flowed, and Sussex came out on top. And again, I think all the sort of the noise that had been coming out of Sussex to begin the season was that we're up for this season. All the stuff that's gone wrong over this winter has just got us pissed off, to use that phrase or use that word. And effectively, they've proven it right. And then, to be honest, as a sort of maybe pessimistic Sussex fan, I was like, well, that's what they would say, wasn't it? It's rather than we all feel quite sad and a bit worried about our finances, we're actually really galvanised and ready to go. But, you've got to, eat your words as someone like myself in these situations and go, well, they've done exactly that. And if it carries on and they did do the unthinkable and win the league, it would be truly one of the best stories in county championship, at least recent history. As a Sussex fan, well, needless to say, as a Sussex fan, I'd be over the moon. But it does feel like this team has got a bit of the bit between their teeth, and it will be interesting to see how that progresses over the course of the season. It's quite hard to keep a bit between your teeth with how the county championship season works, because you go into different competitions, players come and go, and all of these sort of things. But if they can keep that kind of it's us against the world atmosphere and what vibe, Sussex, why not? Why couldn't they make a dark horse charge? I've always, I truly believe Ollie Robinson's the best bowler in County Championship Division 1, maybe notwithstanding Carl Abbott, because I'm a huge Carl Abbott fan. But and the batting is pretty solid. Jack Leaning seemed like a great signing. Tom Price has slid right into that Sussex team. So they've made savvy signings. So who knows? As a Sussex fan, it's hard not to start getting a bit, excited and start talking about that sort of thing. But anyway, we'll move on to the sort of next thing. And that is the sort of standout player or standout players from Division 1. So to just make it a bit easier for myself, I've decided for each division, for every 2 weeks, I'll pick up a sort of standout player, a standout batter, standout all-rounder, and a standout bowler. Now, the batter, I think, and I could be wrong, but I think it was a pretty obvious one. And that was what I was just checking, was he has 123 more runs than the next person in the division. I've already mentioned him, but it's Jamie Smith. Jamie Smith has looked, having had a tough winter where he got, quite attacked for his sort of wicket-keeping. He got attacked for sort of the ways he'd got out in Australia. And all for a very young man. I think he's not even 25 yet. And he's just owned it. And he's just come out and played for Surrey, made himself available, and just dominated County Championship cricket. And I think there's no better marker as an international cricketer when you've had a tough series away. And let's be honest, it's the toughest place to go as an England player over the course of the history of England players. That is the case. And also, he wasn't maybe as bad as it kind of felt like he was, because often the thing he had been so frustrating was that he kind of threw away positions where he'd got in. So it's like, compared to most England batters in Australia in the last sort of 10 years, say, or 15 years since 2010-11, it's been like, the problem's not been them getting in and then getting out. It's just them not being able to get any runs against Australian bowlers. Jamie Smith got in and then got himself out, and that was the frustrating thing, and it's almost that hope which kills you, right? He's gone, as I say, gone into the Surrey team. Do not get me wrong. I mentioned it at the top of the show. Surrey have played on 2 of the flatter wickets you'll ever see in an 8-pool in a county championship. But you still got to score the runs. I often feel like I fall too far on the side of it. Maybe it's my bowler background, but on kind of discounting runs on flat wickets. But at the end of the day, as I mentioned, someone's got to score the runs. And Jamie Smith has been that someone, alongside Ollie Pope. Ollie Pope's had a great start to the year. But Jamie Smith has scored heavily and scored big hundreds from 3. And I think it's just done a massive, and especially given, there's been a lot of talk about who could be sneaking in as a wicketkeeper batter. And, it's the equivalent of the sort of incumbent striker for England scoring a couple of hat-tricks to start the Premier League season. It's sort of like a, calm down, everyone. There's a few other very good wicketkeeper batters around the country, a few other good strikers, but I'm the man. And that's what it's looked like for me, for Jamie Smith. And he's not that kind of character sort of verbally, but to me, those 2 innings suggest that in an unspoken way, I guess, or just showing, not telling, I guess, would be the way. Anyway, moving on from Jamie Smith, I think he's had a brilliant start, and I think that's a very obvious one in a way. Now, for all-rounder, I'd say it's a bit more, a few you could maybe throw in, but I think sometimes one standout performance is enough, and Matt Critchley's game week 1 performance was enough. I think he scored 173, and then in the second innings against Hampshire took 5 for, and he averaged about 6 with the ball, because he doesn't bowl all that often, because they've got Simon Harmer in the team and it's April. But he came on, bowled his leggies, and bowled Hampshire out. And it was just one of those performances where you couldn't kind of write almost just how good it was. I'll get it up, just his the actual specific numbers that he pulled off. 173, and then 1 wicket for no runs, and then 5 wickets for 9 runs. That's not a bad first game, I think it's safe to say, down in Southampton. I think Matt Critchley, I could be wrong, but has a bit of a history of doing really well on first game of the season. And I know last year he played Surrey and he scored 100 in the first game of the season. I don't know if he took any wickets. I assume he did. But anyway, Matt Critchley is one of those cricketers who always performs. I'm a huge fan of Matt Critchley's. And he's a big part of why I think Essex have some legs towards being able to push towards the title. But that performance in and of itself was just so good. And again, Hampshire, weren't brilliant. But again, scoring 173 against Hampshire when they have Carl Abbott in that bowling lineup is enough for me to say that's impressive. And that's, is maybe reverence to how much I appreciate Carl Abbott's bowling. But again, Matt Critchley, huge performance from him in the first week, and I think he didn't even have a great game week 2, but honestly I think it's where his stats ended up and where sort of my mindset on him is still in a very good place, let's say. Then moving on to bowler, it's Carl Abbott. And I think I have to make a shout out to a Sussex bowler here in Henry Crocombe, someone I played growing up, an incredibly good bowler. He's made a little switch to his bowling, and he's taken 13 wickets at an average of 13. But the reason I have to sort of discount Henry Crocombe a little bit is that Ollie Robinson is the leader of that attack, and then if not, it's Finn Hudson-Prentice, and then he comes on, and then him and Tom Price. And Crocombe is done unbelievably, and he's taken brilliant wickets at a great average. But I think compared to who I've been, and it shows how much I appreciate his bowling, as I've already mentioned about 4 times, and we've not even got to the bowler yet. But the person I've taken instead of him for the standout bowler for these first 2 weeks is Carl Abbott. Now, Carl Abbott just bowled Hampshire to victory, but to begin the season, he's taken 12 wickets at an average of 12. He took 10 for against Yorkshire, just gone. He didn't do brilliantly in the Essex game, and he only bowled, obviously, in that one inning. So, again, kind of got limited to the amount of bowling he could literally do, but he took 76 runs for 2 wickets. But then at Yorkshire, at Headingley, good place to bowl as a seam bowler, he took a 10 bag. And it's just one of those where, as a bowler, he carries so much load for Hampshire in the sense of both psychologically of like, I know I need to take a lot of wickets. But as I mentioned, Henry Crocombe having really good bowlers around him, like Henry Crocombe has this great sort of nucleus of Hudson-Prentice, Robinson, himself, and then, as I mentioned, Pricey. They were great 4, and they did a lot of like sharing the load in a sense. Hampshire, to me, it's like Carl Abbott's at the top, Sonny Baker and Eddie Jack, as much as I really like them as young England bowlers, they are not quite on that level yet. And then you've got Cody Yusuf, the overseas. But to me, the level at which Carl Abbott is operating and the level at which you see batters facing up against him, just you can tell they're just like, I don't really care about scoring runs against him. I just want to survive. And on some of these wickets and all of these sort of things, being able to do that as a sort of nearly 39-year-old fast bowler is so impressive. And the control he has, and it's like he kind of operates as a sort of county championship Glenn McGrath. I mean, because it's just like people don't score off him and they sort of almost don't want to. And it sounds stupid to say don't want to, but they don't want to take the risks. And usually when they take the risks, they get caught in the slips or they get bowled. And again, I'm talking with such great reverence for him, but I think he deserves it in a sense. And because he's so consistent, it's almost everyone gets very used to what he does. So Carl Abbott is a sort of standout bowler for my my lineup, I guess. So here it is, the Division 1 sort of County Chat 12, if you will. It's a sort of tricky one to sort of do to begin the season, because again, you're trying to like do it off, what's going on. But basically my idea for this County Chat 12 for Division 1 and Division 2 that we'll do is that it's going to be a consistent series throughout it. So when throughout the year we'll be updating it. But what you're going to have is that these like players are it's not just going to be for the 2 weeks they've just had. It's going to be for the 2 weeks they've just had, but including everything before that. So these guys have made their cases, and for them to get pushed out of the lineup, someone's got to really jump ahead of them. So whether or not, for example, Jamie Smith is in this lineup, he will probably play for England this summer, and I say probably, almost certainly play for England this summer. So he will probably drop out of it. But for everyone else, they've put their marker down, and someone's got to take them over them by having incredibly good weeks. I hope that makes sense. I'm trying to think of some some fun sort of name we can give them for them staying in the lineup for 1 week is thus. And then if they stay in for the whole summer, they get some prize at the end. And of course, the prize that they'll never get, because none of them will see it. But, I'm trying to think of a good name. If you have a good name, drop one in the comments. The kind of rough thing I've got at the moment is they get a bail for each time they're in the team, and then they get a wicket at the end. But then that feels a bit confused. Anyway, I might cut all of that. You get the kind of impression that it's basically going to be a team of the season, but it's going to be updated throughout the season, and then the end 11 or end 12 will be the kind of County Chat 12 for Division 1 that year, and the same for Division 2. I hope that makes sense. I've probably explained it very poorly. Without further ado, let's get into the 11. Jake Weatherald has had a really sneakily good start for the season for Leicestershire. Leicestershire, he looked very, very good against Sussex when I was seeing Sussex bowl to him effectively, and then he did score, I think, a 50 in Leicestershire's 691 at Surrey. Yet to get his first 100 for Leicestershire, but he's sort of at his best at the moment. He's playing his best cricket, and he's proving it, and he's batted well on some fairly good wickets. So yeah, Jake Weatherall's in as the opener for Leicestershire. We got Adam Lyth as well, so we got a lefty opening partnership in the County Chat 12 to begin the season. And Adam Lyth is just a brilliant cricketer. He remains that being the case, and also the sort of simple truth of he is like for Yorkshire so important for those runs, and like at the moment he's just about kept them afloat, but Yorkshire, have had a bad start to the year. But I feel like it's going to be another year where he's really doing a lot of heavy lifting at the top of that lineup. Scored 97. He's already got 250s, and he's already averaging more than 50. And that's kind of sneakily, like I wouldn't have said as like a County cricket fan, I really even almost noticed that. But really impressive. Now, Jamie Smith, we've kind of already talked about him a lot. Reality is he is just, quite frankly, batting at a level which is remarkable, and he was batting on some very flat wickets, but he is averaging 99 so far. He's had 4 innings and he's passed 50 3 times, 2 of those being 100. So at the end of the day, he's playing unbelievably, and it will be kind of probably when he stops playing for Surrey that he comes out of this 11. In at 4, James Rew. So kind of the main person who's been talked about as being his replacement as a wicketkeeper batter has been James Rew. James Rew is remarkably consistent. He was brilliant in that first game of the game week against Nottinghamshire, and I still hold Nottinghamshire up there as sort of the best bowling lineup in the country. He's only had 3 innings due to Somerset winning so heavily at Essex. So again, 3 innings, 234 runs, high score of 122, and an average of 78. He's just had a very, very good season. That very easily could be Ben Foakes, by the way. Ben Foakes has had a great start to the season as well. I just favoured Rew maybe slightly because he's been in sort of more of a winning side, and also Foakes is playing on those very flat wickets, as I mentioned, and he's got a couple of not outs that have massively boosted his average. But he could have been Ben Foakes very easily. Joe Clark in at 5, just having a good year, simply put. Not batting has had a bit of a struggle, but he is second on the run scoring charts. Got 100 this week, just gone against Glamorgan. Kind of, you'd probably say a game-winning 100 in a sense, but yeah, very good batter. You kind of know what you're going to get from Joe Clark. Matt Critchley, as I've already mentioned, he actually bats higher up in his team, but I put him in here at 6. Again, you know what you're going to get. He's such a consistent batter. I hope for his sake he can kind of continue with his batting form, because I think at some points in previous years he's started very well and has petered away. But I think his talent is easily there for an 1,000-run season. And if he got an 1,000-run season and say a 30-wicket season with the ball, that is, that's probably Player of the Year kind of vibes. Now, Craig Overton didn't really have a particularly noteworthy game week 1, but you could argue pretty much won the game for Somerset. Actually, that's just not true at all. I forgot how well he did with the bat against Notts. He got a 60 not out and an 18 not out. But anyway, he didn't do particularly well with the ball against Nottinghamshire. But when he played against Essex, 141 with the bat in their 1 innings, kind of changed the game. Massively counter-attacking knock. Scored at sort of a strike rate, I think was around 100. At least it was kind of before the evening play. And then you slow down a little bit. 141 of 180, but bear in mind, no one was really scoring in this game. Essex had started the game with 149 in their first dig. Craig Overton scored 141 of their 348 from 7, maybe 6. A ridiculously good innings, and he has got all the talent. He's an incredibly good bowler, and and then he did very well in that second innings to kind of peg it back. He was also captaining Somerset. So, just a lot of good things in essence about Craig Overton's season so far. And he had a go for England, but whether or not, again, he's someone who could kind of come back into the fray, who knows. Mason Crane, I've snuck in here. As if anyone who's a real County Chat stan, they'd know Mason Crane has not always been someone I've been particularly high on. So this is a bit of a tip of the cap to Mason Crane having a very good year. And especially in that first week, he kind of bowled Glamorgan into a position where they kind of may well have won the game, Yorkshire, in game week 1. Mason Crane nearly bowled Glamorgan to victory against Yorkshire. There's also just been some great quotes coming out from Mason Crane recently, like him talking about he had the phrase like, be wary of the old soldier because there is a reason they are old, and he sort of related it to being a spinner. He's like, be wary of the old spinner because there is a reason they're an old spinner, as in professional cricket. I kind of get what he means, but it's also kind of scary. But it's like, if that's the mindset he's in, I'm kind of here for it. He's also been batting very well. He's always been quite a sneaky good batter, as in he can hold that end really well. And he kind of did exactly that against Nottinghamshire and kind of almost held out the tide against that sort of clear losing effort he was in. But anyway, Mason Crane, tip of the cap to you, mate. I didn't see it coming, but Glamorgan is a spinning wicket. Cardiff is often somewhere you can get wickets as a spinner, and if he can do this through the whole season, I mean, was doing it in early April. I mean, some of the balls he was bowling was like, oh yeah, that's exactly what we heard of Mason Crane in 2018 when he played that game at the SCG. I think he also came out with quotes of being like, "I hope my only test isn't when I was 10 years before my prime," and all of those sort of things. And it's cool. It's quite punchy, and I quite appreciate that. Someone being like owning their career and going, it's not been as good as I want it to be, but I think I'm good enough. And I think he is, and I think everyone sort of has said that. So Mason Crane is in the County Chat 12. Anyway, on to Ollie Robinson. So yeah, earning himself a bail. Does that work? I don't know. I'm trying to think of like the award that can be for being in the County Chat 12. Maybe it doesn't need an award, but I like the idea of it. In 9, we've got Ollie Robinson. Again, someone I probably before the season was not as high on as I maybe could be, but his bowling I've never faltered on. I think he is one of England's best bowlers, especially at this point of his career. 10 wickets, an average of 15, economy of 2.7, sort of leading this Sussex lineup, who's done brilliantly to take 20 wickets in both games so far. He's also been captaining, and I'm going to give him the captain as James Rue's got the gloves there. Ollie Robinson's got the captaincy there. You know, it's just he's had a really, really good year so far. The 2 matches, he's bowled well. Sussex have won 2 matches, and no one else has won 2 matches. So it's like, why not? If you're the captain, I'll give it that to you. I'll be kind of updating the captaincy throughout the County Chat team throughout the summer. But again, Ollie Robinson for now feels like a no-brainer in that position. Again, a world in which Ollie Robinson and Carl Abbott were bowling together is a world I'd want to see. But imagine them opening the bowling together. But anyway, Carl Abbott in at 10. I spoke, to the cows come home about him earlier. I think if you've listened to this far into the episode, you know the reverence I have for his career and abilities. So yeah, shout out to Carl Abbott. Henry Crocombe, as I mentioned earlier, again, similar put, 13 wickets. He's leading the league in wickets and averaging 13 with the ball. I mean, he just doesn't bowl the sort of volume of overs of Abbott, of a Robinson. But again, if he takes wicket at that clip, at that strike rate, what is the strike rate? Down, 24 is his strike rate, which is ridiculous. It's unsustainable. But it's, at the end of the day, if he's doing that well kind of throughout, all power to him. And then lastly, I've put Tom Price in there as the 12th man, just throwing a few Sussex boys at the end there. And Tom is someone I know from uni, but he's had a brilliant move from Gloucestershire. They've kind of changed his role at Gloucestershire. I think he batted more like 8 and 9 and was very much more like one of the lead bowlers, and his batting was maybe less relied on. It was just sort of a benefit. To me, in the first few games they've played him for Sussex, they've batted him at 7, which is notable because it's batting above Hudson Prentice and Jack Carson, who are both very talented bowling all-rounders. So they batted him at 7, and they bowled him kind of as that 4th seamer, so behind Hudson Prentice, behind Robinson, behind Crocombe. But Tom's struggled a lot with injuries, so whether or not they're looking at it like, we think your batting's actually better than you probably have performed so far, and maybe the way we can keep you effective as a bowler is by giving you maybe less sort of workload. I don't know. He also bowled quite a lot in the second innings against Warwickshire, so maybe they're just sort of seeing him as an all-rounder who they can just put a lot of workload on, and I hope that's the case, because Tom, anyone who knows him, is a great lad, but also he's very zoned in, very professional, and yeah, it's great to see him doing really well. So that is the kind of County Chat 12. It doesn't really trip off the tongue as well. Anyway, this episode has already run a little bit longer than I was expecting it to. Me just getting lost in various tangents about county cricket, which is kind of why I've started a channel called The County Chat. So here we are. If there's any place for it, here it is. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. There will be the equivalent video coming out for Division 2. I hope you enjoy it when it comes out. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Like, subscribe, all those good things. If you're listening on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts, make sure to drop a follow if you're on there, and drop some ratings if you're on there. Any comments, any thoughts, make sure to get in touch, especially if you've got any kind of clever ideas for a cricket-related name that we can give an award for being in the County Chat 11 every 2 weeks. With that, I think that's it. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed, and I'll see you all very soon. Have a great day.